Foreign portfolio investors have pulled out another $4 billion worth of equities from India so far in 2023, the highest among the emerging markets. So what is the view among investors worldwide right now? What are the big growth drivers? I'm now joined by Stephen Pagliuca, Senior Advisor at Bain Capital. Thank you very much for joining us, Stephen. Let me begin by asking you about your outlook for India. We've just delivered a budget with a strong capex push, a strong infrastructure push. What are the sectors that make you most excited about India?
Well, India has always been expert on technology and service businesses. It's one of the, I think, the only large nation that's growing at 6.5–7% projected GDP. So outlook is very strong for India.
Right. Let me also ask you about the outlook for the U.S. Economy, especially inflation. We're expecting another round of rate hikes by the Fed. What would be your outlook on the road ahead?
I think the road ahead, looking at a kind of 10-year picture, the issues U.S. investors are facing is first the strategic decoupling from China. We had a record trade with China, by the way, last month, but certain areas like chips and medical supplies, we need to supply on our own. The IRA Act is providing for that. So there'll be a bit of a decoupling from China and alliances with Australia, the other Western nations, Japan. The second issue we're facing is this, which you just talked about, inflation, which is a result of the massive increase in the money supply since the crisis over the last 10 years. Now we finally had inflation and the Fed's reacting. By the way, I'm not too concerned about that because for most of my career, interest rates were 4.5% to 5% on T-bills. Anyway, that's the norm. So we're really seeing back to normal now where fundamental value will be rewarded versus speculative value, which came in with all the cheap money out there. And then the third thing we're facing, which is also going to be inflationary, is this transition to a non-carbon economy. I believe that's going to take a lot longer than people think. Have to run dual systems. That'll cause some inflation as well. So those are the three things weighing in the minds of investors from a U.S. standpoint. And finally, probably unprecedented since the Cold War, tensions with the Ukraine war breaking out and issues with China, balloons, and the Taiwan issue.
Right. How do you see fund flows into emerging markets like India amid high interest rates?
Well, India is a very strong market, and I think you've seen large increases in private equity and direct foreign investment in India, and I think that will continue, especially as many companies pull back from China for strategic reasons, and certainly everyone has pulled back from Russia. So India will be the beneficiary of that capital, and it's a very strong economy, very young population base, very educated. So India really has a lot going for it. They've recently improved the rule of law, the bankruptcy laws, and other things. I think India has a ways to go in that, but India is going in the right direction, and it should be a very attractive place for investors to invest in. We certainly at Bain Capital have a great operation there.
Right. I would also like to ask you about diversification of supply chains because of geopolitical tensions, because of the COVID situation in China, because of the pandemic that we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years. What trends do you feel we will see on the diversification front, on the China Plus One strategy? Which countries in Southeast Asia stand to benefit the most?
Well, certainly India stands to benefit. You've already seen Apple increase production in India. And again, I think this diversification of supply chain will be at the margin, mainly for critical components, medical and technology components. So India will be a beneficiary. You see some activity in Vietnam and Malaysia as well. So I think the kind of the term people are using is friend sourcing or insourcing. So a lot of these products will come back to the United States or be friend sourced to countries that are favorable to kind of the Western side of the alliance.
Right. Stephen Pagliuca, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC TV18, giving us your outlook for the global economy and how does India stand to benefit as well. Thanks once again for being with us here on Business 360. That's all we have time for on this edition of the program. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for more updates.